was Thanksgiving 2001, and my 3-year-old son Louis was diagnosed with a rare pediatric cancer. It was stage 4 and rapidly spreading throughout his body. As I held him in my arms, I could feel a vice squeezing my heart so hard. It hurt so bad. My brain was racing to try to figure out what was going on. Why did this happen to my boy? What did I do? What did he do? He's 3 years old. Questions I would never answer. As I hugged and kissed Louis, I told him that I loved him very much and that everything was going to be okay, a promise that I swore to uphold because my life and sanity depended on it as well. As I tried to cope with this disaster, I had to be strong, really strong, and I had to think positive thoughts. I pushed down my feelings of pain and sadness and tried to bottle them up as best as I could. My sole mission was to see my son survive. We started our treatment at Yale, but after doing some research, my wife, Mary Ellen, and I quickly decided to move to Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York. There, they had, right on their website, a survival rate of 50% for this cancer called neuroblastoma. Well, when we talked to Yale, they promised us 30%. Sloan was treating 60 more kids a year. Yale, 2 or 3. It was a no-brainer. We made the decision to move and started our treatment in January of 2002. Louis was now 4 years old. There we met our doctor, Dr. Kushner, and he was an incredible man. He was part of a team that had been together since the early 1980s, and all they did was fight neuroblastoma to get the best results possible. They started with a survival rate almost at 0, and had now worked their way to 50%. Dr. Kushner had a 1-page document. It listed 565 days of what treatments Louis would receive. It started with 4 incredibly difficult rounds of chemotherapy that lasted 3 days each. The doctors told us that these rounds of chemo would kill an adult. He then had surgery, and this team that was at Sloan, the surgeon was so gifted, he did over 1,000 surgeries on these kids. They all had a tumor, as we called it, Louis's bad cell factory, that had to be removed. And the doctor would work and search throughout Louis's body cavity to remove any tumors that were in his lymph nodes or where you could find them. Following that, there was a bone marrow transplant, something that resets your immune system. It's a 30-day treatment where Louis is in isolation. And during that time, we thought that he wasn't going to make it. That's how bad it was. But through it all, there was one shining piece that guided us and helped us, and it was Louis. He was a 4-year-old kid. No matter what was thrown at him, he would rebound. He was happy. He would go play. That was all he wanted to do, just get this stuff over with so I can get back to doing what's fun. Without his courage and his dedication, his spirit, it would have been difficult for us to make it through. The treatment that followed this was really the game changer why Sloan had the survival rate. It was they called antibodies, now well known as immunotherapy, but back then it was pretty radical. So these antibodies would light up the cancer cells and teach Louis's immune system to go and kill them in his body. Unfortunately, these treatments were extremely painful, and Louis had over 100 of them. And my wife, Mary Ellen, she would hold Louis in her lap and just rock him through these treatments. And my wife, I have to say, she was the savior of this ordeal that we had. She was always there with Lou. She was his most ardent advocate. Not one medication, not one chemo round, not one of who knows how many blood transfusions he had. It didn't have his name on it, it wasn't going to happen. So we did these treatments, and at the end of 2002 into 2003, we got the news that Louis was NED, no evidence of disease. He had cleared the cancer and was now on a track that we felt was going to lead him on to the future. We'd made it. The kids were back together again. Lou went to nursery school. The boys, my two boys, were able to play again. And Harry, the 2-year-older brother of Louis, had been separated for weeks and months from Louis as he was in New York. So we were feeling great. We were feeling good. We were looking forward to a nice summer. And then July 2nd, 2002, Louis relapsed with a brain tumor. We were devastated. It's like a trap door opens, you fall through the floor. There's no bottom. We knew relapses were bad. I had been doing research on the disease, and relapses were bad to begin with. But brain tumor relapses were not good at all. We went back to Sloan Kettering, and the doctors there greeted us with grim faces. They said, "We see brain tumors regularly here with the kids. 10% of the relapses are brain tumors." And they said, "Unfortunately, we have treatments that we do. We remove the tumor, we do radiation, we do some chemotherapy, but after a year or two, the cancer comes back and all the children die." They said, "Louis has 0 chance of survival." What's the right of a doctor to take that hope and tear it away from you? We were devastated. But like most of these things, when you're on treatment, you have to move forward. You can't move back, you can't sit still. So Louis started the treatment. He had the surgery. Removing the tumor was actually not such a hard thing. Louis was basically bounced back in 2 days, was running around, playing, and having a good time. In the meantime, I was one night where I was with Louis in a hospital room, and if any of you have ever been in one, they have these small little couches that they expect someone like me to sleep on. And it was 2 a.m, and I couldn't sleep, never mind the couch, I just couldn't sleep. My brain was completely bonkers. I was crying, and all I could see as I was sitting there was a vision that happened over and over again. And mind had a mind of its own, but it was a thought that I could not bear. It was a vision of Louis in a grave, being put down into a grave in a coffin. I was just beside myself. I said, why are you doing this to me? So I opened my computer, and I had to do something, and I wrote his eulogy. It was a 2-paragraph of words that I would say if Louis would not make it. I closed my computer, and I was so mad with myself. I couldn't bear it. But eventually, I somehow hit bottom, and I became so determined that this was not going to happen. This was absolutely not going to happen. My son's not going to die from this. And I closed the computer, crawled in bed with Louis, and fell asleep. As my wife continued the treatment, the radiation treatment with Lou, I went and basically locked myself in my office. And for 3 weeks, I started doing research. I went online, and there's many websites that you can go to. One of the key ones was something called clinicaltrials.gov, which lists all the clinical trials all over the world. And I could just type in, you can type in, right, brain tumor relapse, neuroblastoma, and up come clinical trials. And I'd learned enough medical lingo to kind of figure some of the words out. But what was important was everything was hot linked. There was phone numbers, and I called and I emailed, and doctors got back to me. Most of them said, "I'm sorry, nothing we can do." But some definitely said, "Hey, this treatment may work for you." I don't know, but lucky to talk to them, so I spoke with them, and I created a spreadsheet with 20 different medical potential treatments. And so I felt that there was some on there that could work. I don't know, but at least I had something. I was trying to create some hope for ourselves. So I went back down to Sloan Kettering and met with Dr. Kushner, and we went through the spreadsheet. Piece by piece, every one. I asked him, "What about this one?" He's like, "It's a quack, this doesn't work. This one, we tried this before. This one could work." And I pointed out one that I had found, which was right at Sloan Kettering. It was a treatment called intrathecal, which means that it's given directly into the spinal fluid through the skull. And it used the same antibodies that had worked so well for Louis during his treatment. And I asked him, "Well, what about this one?" He says, well, I don't know, there's only 8 people on it, no children, it's experimental, it's phase 1, I don't know. I pleaded with him. I said, look, my wife and I are going to be aggressive. We know what the end game is here, and we're not going to accept it. We're going to do something. Would you please think about it? So he said, I will get back to you. A week later, Dr. Kushner said, we've decided we're going to do a special protocol for Lewis. And we were like, wow, that's great. So we're going to put together this treatment plan just for him. And they were going to use this treatment. So here we are. We're going to start this treatment. Lewis, we put a port in his head, and they were able to access his brain. And the antibodies that are used in the brain cannot be the same as the ones in the body because your brain has no immune system. So what they did is they took these antibodies and they put a little bit of radiation on each one, and they just put it right into his head. And I remember I just envisioned this like Star Wars. You know, it's going into his brain. These antibodies are floating around. They're getting all these cancer cells attaching to them, and they're just getting nuked by the radiation. Boom, 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 wiping everything out. And that was my vision. So we had 4 more treatments that he had for over a year. It's 2004. And, you know, he was getting scans every quarter, and they all came back fine. No cancer in the brain, no cancer in the body. We started again, return to life, returned back to a normal life. Lewis went to school. I went back to work. Things started to normalize, but as a parent, you're always thinking about, what's going to come. You never know. So the months turned to years, and the tests were always clear. In 2008, we went back down to Sloan. It was another, I think this was a 6 months test. And we sat with the doctor, and he said that Lewis's scans are once again clear. There's no cancer in the brain, no cancer in the body. And he turned to us, and he said, we think that Lewis is cured. And we were like, say that again? Because we didn't quite believe that. So he said, Lewis is cured. You don't have to come back for any scans. You don't have to come back for any treatment. Lewis is the first survivor of this cancer. And with that, it's important to know that for all of us, when somebody closes a door in our face medically, or for whatever reason, it's up to us to find out if there's another door, another way to give us hope. Because without hope, we have nothing but no hope. So today, Lewis is now 21 years old. Lewis's treatment that he trailblazed is now used on all children at Sloan Kettering with a brain tumor relapse. There's a 70% survival rate, and over 100 children have lived that would have normally died. So I want to just take a moment and introduce Lewis and my family. Harry, his son, Mary Ellen. Thank you very much.